I wanna be loved, not for who you think I am, not what you want me to be. Could you love me for me? Real love, with no strings attached. I wanna give you my heart, don't wanna take it back.
Human rights are those qualities, I believe, that are inalienable and that are inherent to each individual. So they are rights that belong to us simply because we are human beings, and that cannot be denied us unless there is some orchestrated attempt to deny the humanity of an individual. So really, when we say we're human rights activists, we are advocating for that which belongs to individuals and that which should be claimed by individuals who don't feel as though their full humanity is being recognized or respected. I'm often offended when people say that LGBT rights are special rights because, quite frankly, we're not asking for anything that heterosexuals as a population, as a group, already have. And so it's merely a matter of recognizing privilege. So heterosexuals are a privileged class, and so they don't question the access they have to certain opportunities. And so when LGBT people come and say, look, you know, I'm struggling, I'm suffering because I don't have the same access that you have to certain privileges, and I would like that. And then that gets labeled as a special right you are asking for because it's assumed on the part of straight people that you're not deserving of those rights. But it's because there is a lack of understanding of the humanity of gay people, and I think we need to come to the place of recognition where we see gay people as human beings and as equals. I think in order for us to claim our rights as LGBT people, we need to first recognize that we do have those rights and that we have an obligation to claim them in order to ensure that we're living full lives. Unfortunately, too many of us have accepted the status quo. We don't feel as though we are respectable, and so we cower in fear and we hide who we are, and we don't feel confident enough to assert our identities and to demand the rights that we deserve. So I think the first step is really self-acceptance and understanding that if you are a respectable human being, then you should be claiming the rights that are yours. The unfortunate reality in Jamaica is that your experience as a gay person is directly dependent upon your class and background, and unfortunately, the vast majority of Jamaicans don't have access to the social capital that will enable them to really enjoy certain privileges and claim certain rights. And I think that's something that we need to address. Just the fact that there is no universal gay experience in Jamaica. There are multiple gay experiences, and oftentimes those who are in positions of authority and privilege don't recognize that there is a need amongst the greater population of gay Jamaicans for rights and recognition, which some of us might not feel they need because we ourselves are comfortable where we are in Jamaica. But I think we need to start fighting for the vulnerable. Even within our own community, we need to recognize that even when we aren't vulnerable, there are others who are vulnerable just because of their sexualities, and that's something that all gay and lesbian Jamaicans should care about. I think the first thing we need to do to engage heterosexuals is to stop assuming that they won't be tolerant. I think that expectation creates a situation where we're feeding into the system of expectations, and we're not really demanding heterosexuals to be tolerant because we already suspect that they will act on their socialization. So if you engage someone from the position that mutual understanding is likely, I think it's far more reasonable to expect that they will engage you in a meaningful way and be able to relate to your experiences. I don't think there's enough of that. There's too much mistrust And so you find where many gays and lesbians are unwilling to come out to people who are straight because they fear backlash. But I think we need to trust in the humanity of people, trust in the compassion that people have, and tell our stories more. Because through telling our stories, I think we'll enable people to learn more about who we are, learn about our humanity, and then in turn they will treat us like the human beings we are. Well, there are a number of resources available to LGBT people. I think most importantly and most obviously is the internet, which has a vast range of sources that can really teach us about human rights beyond the Jamaican context, where I don't think there's enough of a discourse, enough literature about the Jamaican context yet, but there is a lot of stuff out there on the World Wide Web. Also, JFLAG is an excellent resource. JFLAG has great employees who are eager and willing to help individuals who are trying to understand what it means to be gay in the Jamaican cultural context. And I think that's an underutilized resource. People often run to the organization in times of crises. They don't recognize that JFLAG is there as a resource in general, and I wish more people would use that. I think our single most important responsibility as gay and lesbian people is to never be apologetic about who we are. We are Jamaicans, we belong here, Jamaica is our home, and it's important for us to assert that so that others may come to recognize that we are part of the Jamaican family and that we deserve to be respected. I think it's important for us to learn about our human rights, because otherwise we will not develop a self-confidence, self-assurance in our right to demand acceptance, to demand respect from individuals, to demand protections from the government, if we don't recognize that our rights do not come from the Jamaican people, they're not derived from Christianity, they are outside of ourselves, and they are universal rights that we deserve and that we should be claiming as individuals. I think it's important to put a name to anti-gay animus, anti-gay attitudes. Oftentimes Jamaicans are very defensive and very deflective when you accuse them of having prejudices or of practicing discrimination against gay people, but it is because so many people are in denial, so many people are unwilling to confront their prejudices, and I think in order to enable people to do so, the prejudice needs to be named. And so whether you call it homophobia, homonegativity, sexual prejudice, it matters not. The fact is that we cannot run away from the fact that as a people, we have an issue with acknowledging and respecting the humanity of LGBT people, and that needs to be addressed. That needs to be addressed head on by all Jamaicans. When we talk about rights in relation to LGBT people, we often focus on rights to privacy and about how it's unfair that private consensual intercourse is criminalized in Jamaica. What we don't talk about enough is the right to inherent dignity that I think people have, the right to not be treated as subhuman, and the fact that as an individual, if you do not feel as though you are respected and if you are a victim of harassment, no matter how well justified by the society, then that is an infringement on your ability to really thrive as a human being. And that is something that we should be advocating on. We should be talking about the fact that gay people have a right to dignity, have a right to claim who they are, have a right to talk about who they are freely without fearing harassment, violence, discrimination, loss of job, loss of housing. And that is not something I think we really understand as individuals, and it's certainly not something we're talking about enough in the advocacy establishment. I think those gay Jamaicans who have agency should be exercising that agency to help all of us as a community move forward. Unfortunately, too many gay and lesbian Jamaicans in positions of influence do not think they have a responsibility to participate in advocacy. They'll tell you that everyone cannot be an advocate. And I think in so doing, they are reneging on an obligation that we all have to serve and to help in whatever way we can to enable other Jamaicans who are less fortunate, who are more vulnerable, who have less agency to really come into their full selves and stand up as and be recognized as full citizens in Jamaica. So I'm disappointed that gay and lesbian Jamaicans who are in positions of authority aren't doing more, because I think we can. I think those of us who are surrounded by tolerance and do have the agency to shape discourse about homosexual identity should be doing so, and not helping, not using your influence to affect change is negligent. Research shows that coming out is the simple, most effective way to challenge anti-gay attitudes. I think many of us want to live in a Jamaica where LGBT people are recognized as full citizens, where we're able to love freely and openly without fearing discrimination or violence. But unfortunately, not enough of us are willing to do the work that it takes to really push our communities, push our schools, push our families along. Coming out is the single most effective way to say to your society, to people around you, that you are proud of who you are and you will not accept being treated as less than because of your sexuality. And I know for a fact that when you come out to people, they'll often be more respectful of engaging with you and trying to understand than when they find out that you are gay or when you're exposed as gay, because then there is much resentment about why you chose to hide, or perhaps you should be hiding because you know something is wrong with you, and it just feeds into this cultural context where we're always so anxious and so worried about what if people find out. And I think coming out is your making the decision to not allow the hysteria around homosexual identity to dictate how you engage with people. It's where you're saying, look, this is who I am, and I want you to respect me. Obviously, not everyone is in a situation where they can come out, and I respect that, but I think there are many of us who can do more, who can come out to people around us. And unfortunately, because of internalized homophobia and fear that we've really buttressed in our minds, we've imprisoned ourselves in our closets, and we're afraid to venture outside of them. And I think that's really debilitating to the LGBT rights movement in Jamaica. Media discourse is very critical to either entrenching or dismantling homophobic thought. Since the 1970s, gay Jamaicans have been making the claim for why it is we need to be respected as Jamaicans, and they've been actively critiquing homophobic discourse in the media. Today, however, I don't think we recognize the importance, because it's not the critiquing is not as robust as I think it could be. I don't think enough of us are taking the time to write, to letters to the editor to say, look, you made this claim and I'm going to challenge you on it for this reason. Or engaging people in comment threads. I think if you look on articles online now, you'll find that Christians and anti-gay people are very much active and very much engaged in trying to debunk this idea that gay people are deserving of human rights, this idea. And unfortunately, we aren't challenging them enough. But at the end of the day, the media has a huge impact on how people view us, because so many stereotypes are reaffirmed, and unless we challenge them, unless we challenge editors to start being more responsible with how they write about homosexuality, then these stereotypes will continue to be entrenched and will continue to be reinforced, and we are the ones who will suffer as a consequence. So I really, really wish for us to recognize the importance of media narratives and try more actively, as our predecessors have done in the past, to really challenge those narratives and challenge editors to produce more uplifting content about gay Jamaicans.
I wanna be loved.